My name is Anna Hambright, and I am the registered dietitian for the cardiac rehab program and the lead outpatient dietitian at Cheyenne Regional. For the next 10 minutes or so, I am going to talk about explaining the food label. So every food that is packaged, boxed, canned, basically any food that you find at a grocery store will have a nutrition facts label on it. This nutrition facts label has a lot of information and you can learn a lot about what you're eating from it. So we're just going to go through each section and kind of talk about what they mean. So the first section is the serving information. So this is serving size and serving per container. So how many servings are in this box of crackers or something like that. So as we go through these different sections, if you have your own food label you kind of want to look at as we go through and learn a little bit more, you're welcome to do so. So on the two examples on your screen, we have this example of serving size of 2/3 cup. So this serving size and any of the serving size listed are the size of serving that people typically eat. It's not the recommended portion size from the USDA. So it's what people typically eat of this certain food type. Sometimes you'll also see there'll be two columns. So it'll be serving size per serving and per container. This kind of label is more found on items that are sold as like single serving. So think about like a lunch bag of chips or a soda or one of the muffins. Like those are items you typically would just eat by yourself or eat in a single serving. But when you look at the container and the nutrition facts information, it says, oh, hey, actually a serving's only 3 pretzels, but if you eat the whole container, it would be this much. So it's just kind of to help you realize, oh, I maybe not shouldn't eat this whole thing, or if I do, that's fine. And it just nicely puts all the additional information below in the proper quantities. So we always see that first, and that'll usually be at the top of the food label. The next section is the calories. So this is just calories per serving, or as you saw in the last example, calories per container. However it is listed. So this is just a number. It's just a fact to let you know how many calories are in this food. It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. So calories really are very individual. Like how many calories you need per day will be based on your own age, sex, height, weight, and physical activity, and maybe even disease state. So there's no general recommendation if 280 calories is a high, if it's low for something, it's just a number. If you're curious about maybe how many calories you need per day, you can visit this site I listed as choosemyplate.gov, and there's a section on there called My Plate Plan, and they can calculate your individual calorie needs per day based off those above criteria. So you'll see the calories, and then we'll move on to the big section of the food label, the nutrients. So this is your kind of orange yellow box here. So on every food label, there's certain nutrients that need to be listed. And these are our fat, cholesterol, sodium, carbohydrates, and protein. So these will be listed on every type of food label. And it's just there to help you kind of compare two different products. Or maybe you're watching a specific thing and you're trying to do a higher fiber diet. You can find that information here. So some general rules when we're looking at the food nutrient area is the ones I say typically try to limit or keep lower would be our saturated fat. So there would always be a line for saturated fat and trans fats. These are two items that we typically want to try to keep low in our diet. Sometimes here you'll see additional types of fat listed like monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. But really the ones that we want to keep low are just the saturated fat and the trans fats. Another rule of thumb is try to keep sodium lower. Sodium or sodium chloride is like table salt. We typically want to try to keep this low. A quick reference when you're looking at a food label is if it has 140 milligrams or less of sodium, it'd be a low sodium food. Or if it has 300 milligrams or more, it could be a high sodium food. So those are really just tips, like if you're comparing like product to product, like which would be a better choice for me. And then the last thing we kind of want to keep lower on this food label would be this line that says includes 10 grams of added sugar. So this added sugar line is really newer to the food label within the past few years, and it's really beneficial. So added sugars are any sugars that's added to a food during processing versus sugars that are naturally occurring in the food. So as you see on this food label example, we have total sugars as 12 grams, but added sugar is only 10. So 2 of those sugar grams are naturally occurring in the food. A good thing to think about here would be, say, yogurt. So yogurt has a lot of natural occurring sugars, or lactose. That's our milk sugar. But we have all these different flavored yogurts out there. I mean, they even make like dessert yogurts, which they add in flavors or sugars to make it taste delicious. So that would be a good food label if you have that in your house to kind of look at, like, okay, we have total sugars, but how many added sugars are there in there? Typically, especially for heart patients, I recommend added sugars being less than about 30 grams per day. And then if one thing that we do want to try to keep higher on this food label is the dietary fiber. Dietary fiber is great for our heart health, our GI health, our blood sugars, just all over. We're trying to have a higher amount of fiber per day. So a serving size of 4 grams of fiber or more is a nice high fiber food. So you can kind of use these nutrients to kind of weigh the pros and cons of making a snack choice or choosing one item over the other. And then underneath all these major nutrients are our nutrients of concerns, or vitamins and minerals that are typically lower in the American diet. So the ones that will be listed on each of the food labels will be vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium. So that's just will be standardized across the board. Sometimes you'll see more, but you'll never see less. So those 4 will always have to be on every different food label. In connection with the nutrients is this purple column. We consider the daily values. So this is a daily value is a nutrient based off a 2,000 calorie diet. So that's important to remember. Not everyone needs 2,000 calories per day, but the percent of daily value is based off that 2,000 calories a day. So if you're less than 2,000 calories, your daily value will be lower. If you're more, it'll be higher. So it's just really a rough estimate for you to look and compare at certain items. So as you can see, they're connected to each of the nutrients. They'll have a daily value. The only one that two that don't have a daily value would be our trans fats. That's because we want 0. Across the board, everyone wants 0 trans fats. And then total sugars, because the total sugars could be, we have recommendations for the added sugars and percent of carbohydrates per day. So it kind of gets broken out into those. A quick reference when we're looking at the daily value is if it has 5% or less, it's considered low in that nutrient. So when we're looking at this food label here, we have 0% of added sugars. So this would be a low added sugar food. If it has 20% or more, it would be considered a high food. So for this one, we have 23% coming from a saturated fat. So this food may be a high saturated fat food, and 37% of our daily value coming for sodium. So again, this food might be a little high in saturated fat and sodium. So if we're a heart patient individual, those are two that we're kind of wanting to limit or keep lower, maybe this might not be our best choice. These daily values, just for your reference, are here. So with saturated fat, typically we want less than 20 grams, and that stays true for any kind of heart patient. Sodium is the one I wanted to highlight here because their daily value for a 2,000 calorie diet is 2,300 milligrams. For anyone who has any kind of heart disease or comorbidity, I recommend less than 2,000 milligrams. So if you're using the daily value to kind of keep track of how much you're having every day, just don't add that daily value up to 100%. Again, with the added sugars is also something I like to decrease for anyone that has like heart disease or diabetes, and keep that less than 30 grams of added sugar per day instead of that 50. And with dietary fiber, the more the better, but 28 grams is a good recommendation for women. And for men, we actually want about 35 grams per day. So it kind of just breaks it down into the different high, lows, and our goals here. And then the last thing on each of our food labels would be the ingredient list. So you'll find it somewhere. Sometimes it's not straight under the nutrition facts label, but it would still be on that package. So the ingredient list tells you the ingredients that are in the food. And typically they try to use the common name or usual name that we refer it to in parentheses. So you'll see here ascorbic acid is actually like vitamin C. Ingredients are listed in descending order by weight. So what is used most to make the recipe by weight is what's going to be listed first, and then it goes down to like what's weighed the least. So you can use this food label to kind of see what's in the food if you're looking for a certain nutrient. In the ingredients list too would be listed if there's any major food allergies. So if that's a concern, this is where you would kind of look here. And one thing I do like to recommend people looking for is the words hydrogenated oil or partially hydrogenated oil. So if you remember back to that daily value screen on the last one, trans fat had no daily value recommendation. So trans fat is a hydrogenated oil. So in some products, if the serving size is small enough where there's less than a gram of trans fats in the food, they're allowed to list it as 0 grams on that nutrition facts section. But in the ingredient list says hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oils, you know that that food still has some kind of trans fat in it. So it just helps you be a little more investigating of what you're actually eating. So hopefully now you can use your food label to kind of learn more about what you're eating, what nutrients you're consuming, and try to help that guide your choices to having a more healthful diet.